I'm too old to marry, Widow said to Giant Viking. His response changed everything. The wind howled along the cliffs, carrying the salty spray of the sea up to the village perched at the edge of the rocks.
Waves crashed below with relentless force, and gulls circled high in the gray sky, their cries sharp against the roar of the ocean.
In a small cottage tucked behind the cliffs, a widow in her middle years, tended the hearth with careful hands.
The fire flickered and danced, casting warm light across the walls, but it could not chase away the chill that lingered in the corners. Ira's life had been quiet since the death of her husband. She rose with the sun, tended the small garden by the side of her home, and walked along the cliffs in the evenings, listening to the whispers of the wind. She was respected in the village for her wisdom and kindness, yet there were always whispers behind her back. Desperation. Too old to marry, some said.
Her heart is buried in the past. But Era did not mind.
She had learned to live with solitude, finding comfort in the memories of love that had shaped her life. On a particularly stormy evening, when the clouds hung low and gray, a shadow moved along the cliffs. A stranger had come to the village, and he was unlike anyone the villagers had ever seen. Tall as the cliffs themselves, broad-shouldered and strong, he carried an air of power and mystery. Brass. His dark hair fell over his shoulders, and his eyes were the color of storm-tossed seas. This was Rurik, a Viking chieftain known across the northern lands for his strength and courage. Tales of his victories in battles had spread far and wide, yet whispers also spoke of a sorrow that haunted him. A love lost, a life full of burdens. The villagers watched nervously as he approached Era's cottage. It was clear that he needed shelter from the approaching storm.
Era, wary yet curious, opened her door and met his gaze.
I need a place to rest, Rurik said, his voice deep and steady, carrying a weight that seemed to press against the walls themselves. Era looked at him carefully, noting the mud on his boots, the dampness of his cloak, and the way his eyes seemed to hold storms of their own. She crossed her arms. I can offer you warmth and fire, she said, but I must warn you, I am not fond of strangers. Rurik smiled faintly, a gesture that did not reach his eyes entirely. Psst, but nor am I. But it seems fate has brought me here. The storm began to rage as Rurik entered, the wind slamming the door behind him. Era moved quickly, offering him a seat and a cup of warm broth. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the rain hammering against the roof. Finally, Era spoke.
I am Era. I am a widow.
But my life is simple, and I do not seek company beyond what I need. She looked at him squarely. I am too old to marry. Do not mistake my kindness for anything else. Rurik's eyes held a glint of amusement. Perhaps you are too old to marry, he said softly, but perhaps you are not too old to live fully.
Era stared at him, taken aback by the words. They carried no arrogance, no threat, only a strange honesty that touched something deep within her.
Despite she did not reply immediately, only watched as he warmed himself by the fire. There was a quiet strength about him, a power that seemed to belong to another age. Yet beneath it there was a vulnerability she could sense, though she could not yet understand. The night deepened, and the storm grew fiercer. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the cliffs and revealing strange symbols etched into the rocks. They glowed faintly for a moment before vanishing into the gray stone. Ira gasped, recognizing shapes she had only seen in old, forgotten texts. These were ancient runes, whispers of a time when gods walked among men. Rurik stiffened at the sight. The old magic stirs again, he said, his voice low. It has chosen this place. Ira's heart quickened. She did not fully understand why, but a sense of connection thrummed in her veins. The runes seemed to respond to the presence of both of them, pulsing faintly with light. Inspiration. She wondered if her late husband's spirit had something to do with this, for she had kept a small token of him, a pendant with his mark, hanging by the hearth. Without thinking, she reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the pendant, it glowed softly, warming her hand. Rurik's eyes widened, and he took a step closer. "That belongs to your past, but it is tied to what is coming," he said. Ira shook her head, both afraid and curious. "I do not understand."
You will, Rurik said, his voice carrying an almost haunting certainty. But you must trust me. The night wore on, and the storm continued to rage outside.
In the warmth of the fire, they spoke quietly. Eira shared stories of her youth, of love and loss, of the life she had once dreamed of. Rurik listened without interruption, as though he had the patience of centuries. And when he spoke of his own past, of battles fought and loves lost, Eira felt a strange kinship. Zeus, two souls each marked by pain and solitude, meeting in a storm that seemed larger than themselves. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, the storm began to abate. The air smelled of wet earth and salt, and the sea calmed to a gentle roar.
Eira felt a strange mix of relief and longing, emotions she had not allowed herself in many years.
She looked at Rurik standing near the door and realized that this giant of a man had changed the course of her quiet life in a single night. Before he left to explore the cliffs, Rurik turned to her. "Pray. Do not mistake what has passed tonight," he said. "I did not come here seeking a companion, yet the winds have guided me to you." Fate is not so easily ignored. Eira's breath caught. She wanted to ask what he meant, to hear more, but the words stuck in her throat. She only nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. As he stepped out into the clearing dawn, the glowing runes on the cliffs pulsed faintly once more. Eira felt their warmth in her chest, a strange reassurance that the night's events were only the beginning. The pendant around her neck continued to hum softly, and she knew, deep down, that her life was about to change forever. The villagers would whisper for days about the giant Viking in Eira's cottage.
Some would say he was a harbinger of storms. Others would say he was a man marked by fate.
But only Eira understood the quiet truth. A new chapter had begun, one that promised danger, discovery, and perhaps something she had thought impossible to feel again: hope. That evening, as Eira watched the sun sink behind the cliffs, she felt a presence at her window. It was Rurik, silently standing in the fading light. "The storm is only the beginning," he said. "Come with me and you will see why the old magic stirs." Eira's heart pounded. She wanted to refuse, to retreat into the safety of her familiar life. But a part of her, the part that had long been silent, whispered that this was a chance she could not ignore. And so, standing on the edge of the cliffs, with the sea roaring below and the sky painted in colors of fire and gold, Eira made the first choice of many to come. She would step into the unknown, following a man who was as powerful as he was mysterious, and into a story that neither of them could yet fully understand. The wind carried their steps along the cliffs as they disappeared into the mist, leaving the village behind. But even as they walked, the runes glowed faintly in the rocks, a promise that the past and the future were entwined, and that destiny had only just begun to weave its tale. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow stirred, watching the two of them. The world was vast, and forces older than any human memory were awakening. And Eira, the widow who thought she was too old to love again, felt the first spark of a life that might be fuller, deeper, and more dangerous than she had ever imagined. The story had begun. The mist rolled along the cliffs like a living blanket, curling around the jagged rocks and the narrow paths that wound toward the forest. Eira followed Rurik, her heart beating faster than the waves below. She had left the safety of her cottage behind, stepping into the unknown. Yet she did not feel fear, only a mixture of curiosity and a strange excitement. Something deep inside told her that the giant Viking was more than a visitor. He was a part of her fate. Rurik moved with a confident, almost predatory grace. Every step he took seemed to belong to the land, as if the cliffs themselves recognized him. Ira struggled to keep pace, her legs tiring quickly, but he waited for her without complaint, offering a steadying hand when the path became too treacherous. She noticed the small details, the warmth of his hand, the careful way he looked out for her, the way his presence seemed to push back the cold mist. "The runes on the cliffs," Rurik said, breaking the silence. "They are not just symbols. They're warnings. Ancient magic that has slept for centuries now stirs because of forces neither of us can yet see." Ira frowned. "But why me?"
I am just a widow who lives quietly in her cottage. Why would the old magic care about me?
Rurik glanced at her, his stormy eyes softening for a moment.
Because your heart remembers more than most.
And because the past you carry is tied to what is coming. They entered the forest where fog clung to the trees like ghostly veils. Death, shadows shifted among the trunks, and the air smelled of damp earth and pine. Ira shivered, but Ruik's presence was reassuring. He moved ahead, chopping through brambles with a broad sword that gleamed faintly in the muted light. As they walked, Ira's mind wandered to her late husband. She had loved him deeply, yet grief had taken root after his passing. Breaths, she had told herself she would never love again. And yet, standing beside Rurik, she felt emotions she had long buried, curiosity, longing, even a spark of desire. But she pushed the feelings aside, reminding herself that he was a stranger and that she had no place for romance in her quiet life. Suddenly, the path ahead disappeared into a frozen river. Breath. Thick ice covered the water, but cracks spidered across the surface, glinting in the dim light. Ira froze. "We must cross," Rurik said, his tone calm but commanding. Ira shook her head. "It is too dangerous. I cannot risk falling." "You can do this, trust me." He led the way, testing each step with the tip of his boot. Ira followed, gripping his arm when the ice creaked dangerously beneath her weight. The river was treacherous, yet Rurik's steady presence gave her courage. By the time they reached solid ground on the other side, Ira's hands were numb, but her heart swelled with a strange exhilaration. She had survived something dangerous, and she had done it alongside him. That was terrifying, she admitted, brushing snow from her sleeves. Rurik chuckled. A low, warm sound. Fear sharpens the senses. It reminds us we are alive. They continued through the forest, and the fog grew thicker. Strange whispers drifted on the wind, soft and indistinct, like voices from a distant past. Ira felt her skin prickle. The trees seemed to lean closer, watching them, almost alive. Brash. She thought of the runes on the cliffs and of the glowing pendant she carried. Was this magic calling her? Or warning her? Without warning, a dark figure appeared on the path ahead. Cloaked in shadows, the woman's presence seemed to suck the light from the fog. Her eyes glowed faintly, and her smile was sharp and cruel. "You have come far," the woman said, her voice like silk stretched over steel. "But you do not belong here, Viking. And you, widow, you are far too curious for your own good." Era stepped back instinctively, but Rurik placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Stand still. Do not show fear." She feeds on it. The woman circled them, her cloak whispering over the leaves. The old magic is dangerous, and it will not forgive you. Bration. The runes have chosen, and the fate of this land may depend on who is strong enough to survive. Era swallowed hard. Who are you? I am one who remembers what others have forgotten, the woman said. I am one who will not let the past be erased. And now I watch you. The figure vanished into the mist as suddenly as she had appeared, leaving a lingering cold that seeped into Era's bones. Break. Exhaled slowly. That was the sorceress, he said. She has been waiting for someone like me, someone tied to the runes. And she will not stop until she has tested us both. Era's heart raced. Tested us? How? He looked at her, eyes fierce and protective. Through danger. Through fear. Through fire and frost. You may not understand now, but you will see. The journey ahead is not easy.
And you will be tested in ways you cannot imagine. They walked on in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on her.
For the first time, Era felt the fragility of her life and the strength of her will mingling in a strange tension. She realized that the woman in the forest had not frightened her entirely. She had stirred something within her, a readiness she did not know she still possessed. By the time they reached a clearing, the sun had begun to break through the clouds. Snow-dusted trees glimmered in the pale light, and the air smelled of cold and life mingled together. Rurik stopped and turned to her. You have done well, he said. Most would have turned back after the river. Most would have fled at the first shadow. But you are stronger than you know.
Era felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the sun. I
do not know if I am strong, she admitted. I am only trying to survive. Rurik's gaze softened. Survival is the beginning, not the end. What we do now, what we choose, will define us. They continued into the forest until they reached a hidden glade, where the snow had melted into soft grass. In the center lay an ancient stone altar, engraved with runes similar to those on the cliffs. Era approached it cautiously, feeling a strange hum in the air. This is why the runes called me here, Rurik said quietly. This altar, it is tied to the magic of the old gods. And it is connected to you more than you realize. Era's fingers traced the carvings, and a warmth spread through her hand. Images flashed before her eyes, memories not her own. Battles fought long ago, lovers lost, storms that had shaped the land. She stumbled back, breathless. Do you see now? Rurik asked. You are part of something far greater than yourself, and I am bound to this as well. Ira shook her head, trying to make sense of it. But why me? I am just a widow. I have lived quietly all my life. Despot, quiet lives are often chosen for a reason, Rurik said, his voice gentle yet commanding. The gods often hide power in those who do not seek it. You are stronger, wiser, and braver than you give yourself credit for. As they studied the altar, a distant howl echoed through the forest, low and mournful. Era felt a shiver run down her spine. Wolves, perhaps, or spirits of the past. Rurik's eyes darkened. We are not alone, he said. And this is only the beginning. Ira realized she trusted him. though she could not explain why. She did not yet understand the magic or the dangers, but she felt safe with him, as if his presence alone could shield her from the unknown. And in that safety, a quiet bond began to grow between them, a bond that was more than respect, more than companionship, something older and deeper, though neither would name it yet. As the sun set, painting the sky in colors of fire and gold, they made camp in the glade. Rurik built a small fire, and Ira gathered herbs and moss for warmth. The forest grew quiet, almost reverent, as though it too waited for what was to come. Sitting beside the fire, Rurik looked at her. "The sorceress will not give up," he said. "But she will test us at every turn. But we must be ready. Together."
Era nodded, feeling the truth in his words.
"Together," she repeated, tasting the word as if it were new.
She realized that she had spent so many years alone, thinking herself safe, that she had forgotten what it meant to trust another person completely.
That night, as the stars shone faintly through the mist, Ira could not sleep. She thought of the cliffs, the glowing runes, the mysterious pendant of her late husband, and the giant Viking who had entered her life. She felt fear, yes, but also excitement. She felt alive in a way she had not for many years. And somewhere in the shadows of the forest, unseen eyes watched them. The sorceress, patient and cruel, plotted her next move, knowing that the bond forming between Era and Rurik was the key to the power she sought. Era shivered, not from cold, but from the anticipation of what was to come. She did not yet know the dangers, the trials, or the secrets that would be revealed. But she knew one thing. Her life had changed forever, and there was no turning back. The first step into the unknown had been taken, and with Rurik by her side, she felt, for the first time in years, that she could face whatever fire or frost awaited her. The forest seemed darker as the days passed. Mist hung thick between the trees, and the sun barely touched the ground through the heavy canopy.
Ira and Rurik moved carefully, guided by the whispers of the wind and the faint glow of her pendant.
Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the magic around them weighed on their shoulders. Era had begun to trust Rurik completely. His presence was steady, almost calming, and he had a way of understanding her without words. She admired his strength, but she also saw the sadness in his eyes, the loss that had shaped him into the warrior he was. And yet beneath that strength there was gentleness, a patience she had never expected from a man so formidable. They had left the glade behind and followed the path toward the ancient fortress, a place Rurik said was tied to the sorceress. The fortress rose like a dark crown on a distant hill, its walls covered with moss and ivy, its stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. Rumors spoke of it as a place where magic lingered in the walls and where shadows moved with a will of their own. Rao, indesperate.
Era felt a chill as they approached. "Are you sure this is the right place?" she asked.
Rurik nodded. "This is where the magic is strongest."
And it is where the sorceress waits. We must be cautious. They entered the fortress cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The air was cold and still, and the shadows seemed to move around them. Ira clutched her pendant, feeling its warmth against her chest, and for the first time she realized that her late husband's spirit might still guide her, even from beyond. Suddenly, a voice rang out, smooth and cruel. Breaths. "So, you have come at last," the sorceress said. She stepped from the shadows, her cloak flowing around her like black water. "The widow and the Viking drawn together by fate. How touching, but foolish." Rurik stepped in front of Ira, his sword raised. "Stay back," he commanded. "Do not harm her." The sorceress laughed, a sound that seemed to echo in every corner of the fortress. "Harm her? Oh, no. I only seek what is mine by right. The magic calls to me, and it will not be denied. You, Viking, are a link to the past, and you, widow, you are a key." Ira's heart pounded. A key? To what? To the power hidden in these stones, to the old magic that sleeps here, the sorceress said, and to the souls who have been bound to it. You both will either unlock it or be consumed by it. Rurik's jaw tightened. Then we will face it together. Shh. Era felt a surge of courage.
For the first time, she stepped forward without hesitation.
"I am not afraid,"
She said, her voice firm.
by side. "Whatever comes, we will face it side by side." The sorceress smiled thinly. "Very well," she said, raising her hands. The air around them seemed to shimmer and twist, and the shadows in the room began to gather, forming shapes like living darkness. Rurik swung his sword, cutting through the shadows, but they reformed instantly. Era felt her heart racing, yet she did not back down. She closed her eyes and placed her hands over the pendant. A warm light spread from it, filling her chest and radiating outward. The shadows shrieked and recoiled as the light pushed them back. Rurik looked at her in surprise. "The magic. You control it."
Era opened her eyes.
"Brace. I think I can," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "It feels like it belongs to me and to him." She touched the pendant, and now, maybe, to us both. "You are stronger than I thought, but strength alone will not save you." She struck the ground with her staff, and the floor beneath them cracked, sending a wave of dark energy toward Ira and Rurik. Rurik caught Era by the arm, pulling her back just in time.
Hold on to me, he shouted.
They leapt together over the energy, landing on solid ground. Era could feel the warmth of his grip and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. A deep trust formed between them, stronger than fear. For hours they fought the sorceress in the fortress, her magic shifting and changing, testing their courage and resolve. Era learned to use the light from her pendant to shield them and to push back the shadows. Rurik used his strength and skill to protect her, to strike at the source of the sorceress's power when she revealed it. During a brief pause in the battle, they found themselves alone in a small chamber. Era leaned against a wall, breathing heavily, her hands glowing faintly from the pendant grasp. Rurik knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You are incredible," he said quietly. "But I have fought many battles, but I have never seen courage like yours." Era looked at him, feeling a warmth she had not felt in years. "I only did what I had to do to survive. And to help you." "You have done more than help me," Rurik said. "You have reminded me that there is more to life than battle, that even in darkness there can be light." Era's heart fluttered, and she realized that her feelings for him had deepened. She had thought herself too old to love again, too cautious to open her heart. But now, standing beside him in this ancient fortress facing danger together, she felt something powerful growing between them. A bond forged not only in trust, but in shared courage and quiet understanding. Their moment of quiet was shattered by a sudden roar. The sorceress had returned, more furious than before. "You cannot win!" she screamed. "The power of the old magic belongs to me." Rurik stood, placing himself between Era and the sorceress. "We may not be able to control it completely," he said, "but together we are stronger than you know."
Era nodded. She focused on the pendant, letting its light flow outward.
The glow grew brighter, stronger, until it filled the chamber. The sorceress staggered, shielding her eyes. Rurik struck with his sword, sending a wave of energy toward her that pushed her back against the wall. For a moment, silence fell. The sorceress, defeated for now, vanished into the shadows, leaving a lingering chill in the air. Era and Rurik stood together, exhausted but triumphant. "You were amazing," Rurik said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder.
"I could not have done it without you." Era felt a surge of pride, but also something deeper, something that made her cheeks warm.
"We did it together," she said softly. They left the chamber and emerged into the fortress courtyard. The sky was darkening, clouds heavy with rain, but the wind no longer carried the sense of danger it had before. Era realized that this victory had changed them both. They had faced death, magic and fear together, and they had survived. As they prepared to rest for the night, Ira looked at Rurik. "Do you think the sorceress will return?" she asked. "Yes," he said, his voice steady but wary. "She will not give up easily, but we will be ready." Ira nodded, feeling a sense of determination she had never known before. She had spent her life protecting herself, avoiding danger, avoiding love. But now she understood that courage was not just about survival. It was about facing the unknown, embracing it, and trusting others with your heart. That night, they made camp in the fortress courtyard. A small fire burned between them, casting flickering shadows on the walls. Era placed her pendant beside her, feeling its warmth. She realized that her late husband's spirit had guided her here, to this moment, to Rurik. And she felt a quiet hope that love, even in the shadow of danger, could bloom again. Rurik watched her quietly, sensing her thoughts. "You are not the same woman who hid behind her cottage," he said softly. "You are stronger, braver, and more alive."
Era smiled faintly.
"I never thought I would feel alive again," she admitted. "But with you, A silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words and shared understanding. The night was quiet, but the fortress seemed alive with unseen forces. Somewhere in the darkness, the sorceress plotted her return, her anger and determination growing. Era knew that the next battle would be even more dangerous, that the challenges ahead would test their courage, their trust, and the bond growing between them. But for the first time, she did not feel fear. She felt ready to face whatever came next, with Rurik at her side. As the fire crackled and the stars shone faintly above the fortress walls, Era allowed herself a moment of peace. She had taken a step into the unknown, faced magic and danger, and discovered strength she did not know she possessed. And she had found, in Rurik, a companion who respected her, protected her, and shared her courage. The night was far from over. The sorceress's shadow lingered, and the fortress held secrets still waiting to be revealed. But Era and Rurik had faced the darkness together, and they were stronger for it. As they drifted toward sleep, Era felt the pendant warm against her chest, and she whispered a quiet promise to herself, to Rurik, and to the unseen forces guiding her path. She would face whatever came next, and she would do so not alone. But as the first light of dawn approached, a distant sound echoed through the forest, a sound that made Era's heart skip a beat. The sorceress was returning. And this time, she would not come alone. The forest trembled under the sorceress's return. The air was thick with magic, and the mist moved like living hands curling around the ancient fortress, as if trying to claim it. Its warmth pulsed through her veins, steadying her racing heart. Rurik stood beside her, his sword gleaming faintly in the gray light. Together, they faced the darkness that had followed them here. a darkness older than any memory of man. "She's coming," Rurik said, his voice calm but urgent. "We cannot let her strike first. Stay close to me," Era nodded. Fear pulsed in her chest, but it was mingled with a strange thrill. She had faced danger before, yes, but this time was different. They were stronger together, their bond tested by fire, frost, and shadow, and she would not let the sorceress harm him or herself without a fight. From the edge of the courtyard, the sorceress emerged, her cloak flowing around her like black water. Behind her, the shadows moved as if alive, forming shapes of wolves, serpents, and storm-tossed warriors. Her eyes glowed with a cold, cruel light.
"You have survived far longer than I expected," she said, her voice echoing against the fortress walls.
"But this ends tonight. The magic belongs to me, and I will take it, body and soul if I must." Rurik stepped forward, his sword raised. "You will not take anything. Not from me. Not from her. We are ready for you." Ira felt the pendant glow brightly. A warmth spread through her, stronger than before. She realized that the magic was not just in the stone. It was in her, in Rurik, in the trust and courage they shared.
The sorceress hissed, raising her staff, and the shadows lunged forward.
The battle began. The air trembled as magic collided with steel. Rurik moved like a storm, cutting through the shadows, his sword guided by experience and instinct. Eva focused on her pendant, letting its light radiate outward, pushing the darkness back. Desperation. Together they formed a circle of protection, each movement synchronized, each glance a silent communication of trust and strategy. The sorceress was powerful, far stronger than any enemy they had faced before. Balls, she struck with bolts of dark energy, summoned illusions that tried to frighten them, and whispered lies meant to shake their resolve. But Era and Rurik were steady. Every time her magic surged, they countered it not with hatred, but with courage and unity. During a brief pause in the chaos, Era noticed a faint image appearing on the walls of the fortress, a vision of her late husband, his eyes kind and proud, gesturing toward the pendant. Breath. She understood then that the magic had always been hers to wield, guided by love and memory, not by fear. "You can do it," she whispered to herself. "We can do this together." Rurik caught her eye. "Do not falter," he said. "You are stronger than you know." Era felt a surge of power, and she focused it into a single brilliant beam of light that shot from the pendant. The sorceress shrieked, her illusions shattering, her shadows dissolving into the cold wind. Rurik struck at the source of her magic, a final, precise blow that sent a ripple of energy through the courtyard. The sorceress fell to her knees, her power broken. She glared at them, breathing heavily, but she no longer seemed invincible. Ira stepped forward, her pendant shining like a star against the gray of the fortress. Breath. "It is over," she said firmly. "Your magic will not harm us anymore." The sorceress vanished, her cloak swirling into the mist, leaving behind only silence and the faint scent of smoke and rain. Ira sank to her knees. Exhausted, her heart still racing, but relief washed over her. She had survived. They had survived. And she realized something extraordinary. She had done it, not alone, but with Rurik by her side. Rurik knelt beside her, brushing snow and dirt from her shoulders. "You were incredible," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "I have never seen courage like yours." "You faced magic itself and did not falter." Aya smiled faintly, her chest still heaving. "We faced it together," she said softly. "I could not have done this without you." For a moment silence enveloped them. The wind had calmed, the clouds were breaking, and the first hints of dawn glimmered on the horizon. The fortress, once a place of fear and shadows, now seemed almost alive with quiet approval, as if it recognized their bravery.
Uruk reached for her hand, and Era felt a warmth spread through her.
Era, he said, his voice gentle, the journey we have shared, it has changed me.
You have shown me that there is more to life than battle, more to love than loss. Will you
walk forward with me? Era's heart leapt. She had spent so many years believing she was too old, too cautious, too bound by memory to love again. But now she understood that love was not measured by years or time. It was measured by courage, trust, and the willingness to open one's heart. She looked at Rurik, seeing the storm and sorrow in his eyes, but also the hope, the strength, and the quiet longing that matched her own. Despair. Yes, she said softly. I will walk forward with you.
Whatever comes, we face it together. Rurik's face softened, and for the first time his stormy eyes held only warmth and relief. He lifted her hand to his lips, a silent promise of protection, trust, and devotion. They stepped out of the fortress together, toward the cliffs where the wind played in their hair and the sea stretched endlessly before them. The first rays of sun touched the water, painting it gold and silver. The runes on the cliffs glimmered faintly one last time, as if blessing their union and the path they had chosen.
Era felt the pendant warm against her chest.
Breaths. It was more than a token of her past. It was a symbol of her courage, her love, and the new life she was beginning. And with Rurik beside her, she felt truly alive, for the first time in many years. They walked in silence, the sea wind carrying the promise of new adventures, new challenges, and the quiet magic that would always watch over them. Each step was a choice, a step away from fear and toward trust, hope, and love. As they reached the edge of the cliffs, Rurik paused. The world is vast, he said. Des. And the magic we have faced is only a part of it. But together, there is nothing we cannot face. Great. Ira looked out over the sea, her hair whipping in the wind, and felt a sense of freedom she had never known. Together, she echoed, her voice steady, filled with certainty. Always together. They turned toward the longship waiting at the base of the cliffs, a vessel that would carry them toward new lands, new challenges, and the promise of a life fully lived. The waves lapped gently against the hull, reflecting the golden light of dawn. The forest behind them was quiet. The shadows and magic calmed, for now. And yet, even as they prepared to sail, a distant figure watched from the cliffs, hidden among the rocks. Bray. Another magic, older and stranger than any they had faced, stirred in the shadows. It would test them again, but Era and Rurik were ready. Stronger, braver, and bound by a love forged in fire, frost, and shadow. As the ship cut through the morning mist, Era and Rurik stood together at the bow, hands clasped, hearts aligned. She felt the warmth of his hand, the steady beat of his heart, and knew that the past, with all its sorrow, had led her here. To courage. To love. To a future bright with possibility. The cliffs faded behind them, the forest became a memory, and the horizon stretched endlessly before them.
And in that moment, Era realized that she was no longer a widow marked by grief.
She was a woman reborn, a warrior of her own heart, a partner to a man who had shown her that love was not measured by age, but by the strength to trust and the courage to hope. The story had reached its dawn, but the journey, the true journey of magic, courage, and love, had only just begun.